Hi everyone, Owen Macaulay here, the director behind Steve Ditko Beyond the Myth, and I just want to take a moment to share with you how and why this documentary was made. So let's begin with the first question. Why a documentary about Steve Ditko? Well, answer that question, we go back a long, long time ago when I was like 5 or 6, and Panini did a reprint of Amazing Spider-Man 2. It was the first encounter between Spider-Man and the Vulture, and that issue got me hooked. And it was really the aesthetic artwork and narrative sensibilities of Steve Ditko that really sung to me. You could see how Peter Parker's keen scientific mind would work when he redeveloped his web shooters in that particular issue, and even the mechanics and secret hideout of the Vulture. And it was a great action adventure romp as well. It's also when he began his career as a photographer in that particular issue. So really, at that point, became a lifelong fan of Steve Ditko. Although at that age, my media literacy and understanding that people actually made these books, that was a little bit beyond me. Years later, then my love of comics stayed with me, and I pursued a career in the field of comic book production, having established Light and Strike Comics at the age of 19 and publishing comics since 2012. And I went on then to also teach. I was teaching in animation for a number of years and designing courses in animation. And prior to my career in terms of my studies, my undergraduate was in history in Trinity College Dublin. So I'm a trained historian, and I've been taught how to evaluate sources and how to put forward a historical and academic argument as well. And even prior to my academic career in college, I was a member of a media youth group called ABNP, which was actually headed by Rob King, who is now the producer for Formula One. So he's really gone far in his career. And when I was with ABNP, I made a short documentary about the history of Tala. And Tala is where I'm located now and the academy. So in 2024, I set up Tala Academy of Sequential Art. Tala is located in Dublin, Ireland, and this is the home of TASQ Art, TASQ, TASQ Art. TASQ Art, its mission statement is to provide Ireland's first academy and basically institution dedicated to the study of comic book art and production. So we have been delivering for 2 academic years now, full academic year courses teaching the entire production pipeline of making comic books. We've been very fortunate in that we've had leading industry experts from Kevin Eastman to Frank Miller to Dave Gibbons to Andrea Romano, and the list goes on and on and on of people who have worked in the sequential arts, both comic books and the adjacent fields of comics, TV, film, and of course, animation as well. At the start of the academy, I had the idea to try and introduce a new series called Creator in Conversation, which would be a series of live in-person lectures, and it would to invite the general public to come in here. We're located at the Edge, an enterprise center in Tala, and there's a designated area called Black Box, which seats about 30 people, and where we record some of our episodes as well. So at that juncture, I had invited people to come in and give talks and lectures to the general public, comic book writers, colorists, and artists. Unfortunately, we were such a new entity, it was very difficult to get the word out there. I was fortunate, however, in that some of the initial master classes that we delivered, we had actually recorded. So our very first one was with Todd Stashwick, who you can see as Paladin in the upcoming Vision Quest. He himself is also a writer and also an artist as well. We had him arrive here in Tala and in person deliver a great talk on like his philosophy and approach to writing comics and writing and telling stories in general. And then we had Kevin Eastman join us on Zoom, where he spoke to a multitude of different people from different time zones. That was incredible. And he shared the genesis of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So after the master classes and after what was initially conceived to be like a short series of talks, creating conversation, I decided to take the material, supplemented by a series of live recordings I did at Dublin Comic Con, and I realized I had enough to release as an audio podcast. So thanks to Podcast Dublin and Media Vibe, we were able to create a platform and edit the recordings and put them out. This time last year, in August of 2025, I decided to do the first miniseries, which was Steve Ditko Beyond the Myth. I was fortunate because having listened to John Sutchers of Word Balloon, who I'll come back to in just a moment, he had interviewed Dr. Zach Cruzy, who spoke about his book, Mysterious Travelers and the Search for a New Liberal Identity, which was a great exploration of the work of Steve Ditko. Having listened to that interview between John and Zach, I actually found the book, bought it, read it, thoroughly enjoyed it. Then a couple of years later, literally in March of 2025, when I just set up, actually probably would have been 2024, actually, I'm cutting myself off a year, when I was in Lisbon for the Monster Film Festival. There in Lisbon, I went to Kingpin Books and I found a copy of Walking with Ditko, which was the book Jack C. Harris, who was Steve Ditko's friend and editor and a fellow collaborator. And I was able to read that, and that was very insightful as well. So when I had set up and established Creator and Conversation and decided I want to do a mini series because, I was a lifelong fan of Steve Ditko, I reached out to both Zach and Jack, and then I was fortunate enough as well to connect with Mark Sen Ditko. So I realized we had a great opportunity here to provide a three-part, each episode, an in-depth conversation and interview with each of the speakers. And then Mark was very good in providing 16 essays written by Steve Ditko himself as well. And we began those episodes with me reading an extract of those essays. But as I mentioned, Creating Conversation was initially an audio only podcast. So this summer in 2026, I began a new series called Throwback Thursday. And what we began doing was re-releasing the video of some of the interviews because although they were audio only, I had the capacity to record it on Zoom, so there was a video component. So with the permission of the interviewees, I was able to re-release the videos and I reached out to Mark, Zach, and Jack and I said, hey, would you be okay if I splice this together into one video? I put together the initial trailer, showed them the trailer before I released it. They all agreed. This is awesome. And then the initial project was literally just tethering together the videos. But as I did it, I realized that I had an opportunity to really explore and put a fine polish on it as well. So I decided to eliminate as much as myself as possible from the recording. Um, the reason for this is because all the speakers are American, and then my accent might be very jarring. And statistically speaking, the episodes where I talk the least are the most listened to as well. So I guess I'm an acquired taste. And as my 7-year-old nephew is not shy of telling me, I have a peculiar laugh, as he says. So maybe I'll go back and put the Charlie Brown, trumpet noise when the adults talk, when I talk in the podcast going forward. But I decided then to reach out to my good friend John Sutchers and ask him to act as interstitials linking scenes, narrating a script I produced for him in order to really elaborate on some of the points that were brought up in the documentary. But I realized in listening back to the material, myself and the speaker, the interviewee, we kind of knew what we were talking about, but I don't know if I addressed it or explained it fully for the general audience. So I really wanted to go back and repackage everything, not change, not alter what was done, but to represent it in a more accessible manner. So ultimately, when all was said and done, I was left with an 80-minute video, which of course is a feature-length documentary, and that's how we arrived at this particular juncture. So I then cut another trailer for it. I also presented the first 2 minutes featuring John's new narration to go into it. And for the most part, I am eliminated from the documentary, but you will hear the occasional, maybe the occasional laugh. I was going to eliminate all that as well in the audio. But John, who is a great broadcaster as well, he has a very good air, and he was explaining to me that that's actually a good playoff for the audience as well, and particularly for the speaker, that if something funny is said, there's a natural laugh there, and for the engagement. And there's also one scene where I put a very pointed question towards Mark, and that there'd be no way to present that without you hearing me say the question. But visually, I don't appear anywhere in the documentary this time, so you won't see my big sweaty head appearing in this documentary. Subsequently, in February of 2026, is the 90th anniversary of The Phantom, and myself and Joe Folder produced a motion comic to celebrate this, featuring the introduction of the Avon novels, narrated and sound edited by Matt Sheedy of Mediavibe, and I then animated Joel's artwork, which he produced. And as a result, I had acquired some new animation and editing skills, and I decided to apply that into this documentary as well. So that brings us to our next point, which is how was this documentary made? So everything that you'll see in Steve Ditko Beyond the Myth was recorded on Zoom. Also, the audio interstitials as well. Essentially, my standard operating procedure is I open up a Zoom call, I speak with whoever I'm interviewing, I would download it and then extract the audio. In season one, Matt Sheedy would clean it up. Since season two, I've been doing the audio cleanup myself. And I would then subsequently as well, since season two, edit around the video, adding in the graphics and stuff. In this feature, I had three video files, so I downloaded them, and then it took about 7 drafts of me cutting them up into which segments to keep and also how they would interact and what the flow would be as well. Once that was done, I then planned where the linked scenes would go in and John's narration, and then I arranged a separate Zoom call with John, and we recorded on Zoom, and from there I extracted the audio then. Now, the best approach when you're doing anything with animation is to record the audio first and then animate over. The reason for this is that the timing is just smoother, okay? So if you try, sometimes in animation, people will record, do the animation and then add the audio afterwards so that the lip sync is the last thing that's added in. That can be achieved, but it does make it a little bit more difficult because the actor or the narrator has to really keep in sync. So for a more natural and best time flow, it's better to do audio first. That's how come it was curious when we released the first 2 minutes of John's recording, somebody was saying it's weak with AI. I'm going to come back to the AI comment in a moment, but I just want to emphasize here now, no, there was no AI used in the making of this documentary. I even put that in the credits and I put it in the press release that went out as well. We've experienced some of the hottest weather here in Dublin in years, at least this year and this summer for sure. And I was putting in very long hours because it's not just editing the file, it's the exporting, and that can take 3 to 5 hours to export. And if you do a full day, I here in the office in the studio until midnight. So really, that's no good. So for someone to turn around and think I'm just feeding AI something and giving it a prompt and then it's spitting it back out, that's yeah. Maybe before you comment something like that, you might want to familiarize yourself with some of my previous work. However, although it's an insult to my character, it is a compliment to my skill. And the reason they felt this way is because how in sync and relevant the footage that was used, how timely it was used. So when it came towards the editing process, I exported the MP4 file, which is the video file, and the MP3 file from Zoom. Essentially, I just exported the MP4 file and only exported the MP3 file, the audio file, when it was finally edited, so we'll have the final audio cut as well. I edit in an open source software called Shotcut. Shotcut is free to use, anyone can access it. It's really user friendly as well. As I mentioned before, when I, first began editing video, we were using actual tape. In this occasion now, we essentially Shotcut still has that tape function, but it's a digital timeline, which you can extract the audio and you can then delete portions of the video and keep the audio, or delete the audio and keep the video. So that was quite handy. And in the initial recording, like there was a lot of pops. There's a lot of, when you make a cut, sometimes there'd be a kind of, skip motion, but then you have to go in, you have to fade in and fade out. But I didn't use any premium software, with the exception of there is one available called Canva. Now, Canva does have an AI function on it, and I want to stress here as well, folks, that I didn't use the AI function in that either. Canva is just very handy for when you're adding in transitions, and I also find it easy to edit some of the audio in it as well. I find it's more user friendly to walk on the background track because, as some of you may have noticed, this is another comment when we released the initial trailer. People are saying, "Oh, I think the music is drowning out some of the speakers," and that was a fair point. And that was me going back saying, "Okay, what can I do to level this out and tweak it?" And I'm quite happy with what we have in the final product. I think everyone comes across very clear. But you can also do that in Shotcut as well. I had considered doing a making of video, really, like in terms of process, but to do that, I would have to record myself while I was editing. And to be frank, the system crashed not once, but twice. And software went awry and files got corrupted. It took me 7 drafts to do it. So what I've done for this particular video is gone back to some of my assets and recorded it on Zoom in share screen. And I've took screen grabs and photographs, and then I've edited it together so you could see that there's a human eye, a human hand, a human mind behind everything and the choices made. The conversation and material and the insight provided, that is Mark, Zach, and Jack. The narration that John provides is from a script by me, but John provided great insight and guidance into the audio editing, and he even edited some of his clips as well, and really brought a broadcaster sensibilities and air to it. So John was fantastic. Some of our recording sessions, they weren't quite, Ted and Dougal making the Eurovision song, but it was like, of course, John is a human as well. And it was funny because some of the comments were suggesting that John was an AI voice. Some other people were saying John sounds like Stan Lee. Just crazy comments. And of course, criticism and dialogue is always welcome, particularly in the endeavor of an academic project. But really, people might have been reaching with some of the comments. Um, but yeah, so that's essentially how it was recorded. It's peculiar because no cameras were used in the making of this documentary. We were using our phones, we were using our computers. I used my laptop and had my PC on standby as a backup. And very rarely do I use a camera in the podcast. For today's episode, what I'm doing is something different. Usually, I have a virtual background because I feel it makes things a little bit sharper when I'm recording. But I deactivated that, instead have a light source. And this is, funnily enough, the second time I've recorded today's episode. So it's now coming up to nearly 6 p.m. And at 1 p.m. I had initially recorded everything. But what happened was, I recorded on my phone. I put it on full brightness. I must have upped it to maximum level, and the file was nearly 7 gigabytes, if not more. And it basically used up all the storage in my Google Drive when I export my files. So all my emails were stopping coming in. I managed to finally upload it to a Google Drive and then delete it from my phone so I get my emails back. But now it's on the Google Drive, but it won't download to any external drive I have. It keeps saying there's not enough space, and I have like a 35 gigabyte drive and everything plugged in, and then saying it's taking 5 hours to export. So I decided just to go back and use my laptop, which doesn't have as strong a camera as the phone does. But if you go back and look at the Jason O'Mara interview we did in season 2, you'll see the difference because we used uh, the black box studio space, and we used a HD camera and a lav mic provided by Podcast Dublin. And you do see the difference in the quality. It is very much light and day. But as I've discovered, I don't think I want to repeat that. That would be an expensive endeavor to try and put everything to try and store the space. I mean, like a day's walk has gone out the window, and I'm going to be here quite late tonight to get this episode out, because I'm recording this on Monday for Tuesday, which isn't ideal, but I gave the priority to finishing the documentary, which I wanted out on Thursday, the 6th of August. Um, and I bring all this up and give you that peek behind the curtain because, it's frustrating then when someone turns around and says, he's this using AI. That's no, it's not. It takes a lot more time and effort to go into everything. So in terms of the hardware as well, everything I edited, it's edited on Shotcut, which I said is a open source software. I can add some graphics and elements from Canvas. That's usually just where I make my title cards and stuff. I don't use any. And then there's one or two stock footage that I use, which is people walking through a forest, someone a hand writing a letter, a clock, and a spinning globe effect. That's something you can use from the assets which from the premium version of Canva. Now, to be honest, I could take my phone, I could there's a globe at home I could spin and take a picture of that. I'm beside a park. I could record the trees myself. Um, but these segments, we're talking like 2 to 5 seconds, and it's just easier when I'm editing that the footage is there, and it's just to create a bridge to link. But to the best of my knowledge, there's been nothing used to generate those images. Like they're genuine footage as well. That's not AI generated either. In terms of the music is being sourced from a website called freemusic.org, and everything is under license as well. And the licensing for that music is included in the credits, and it's also included in the bio of the video as well, where you read about what the video is about. You'll see all those credits. And I was able to make direct contact through the website freemusic.org with the actual musician and composer and get their explicit and direct permission as well in the use of the music. So all of that's being included also. Everything else is purely just myself slicing together the videos and adding the graphics. There's been 14 short videos of John's narration, each featuring original animation shots by myself. And that brings me to our next point, which is fair usage of the imagery used within the documentary. So this documentary, Steve Ditko Beyond the Myth, is intended for academic educational purposes only. It will not be monetized in any shape or form, and everything that's been used is used under the guidelines of fair use. What that means is we're not using any of the characters. Let's say there's a segment with the Green Goblin. I'm not using the Green Goblin as decoration or decorative purposes. It's there for academic examination. So, for example, we explored the Green Goblin myth, which is allegedly Steve Ditko walked away from Spider-Man with over difference of opinion of who the Green Goblin should be. That's of course a bogus myth, which I'm not going to get into here in today's video. You can see the documentary to explore more about that. Um, but in terms of editing that, I took a previous panel of the Green Goblin that Steve Ditko drew before Norman Osborn was even named, and then superimposed it over his Green Goblin and silhouettes as well of the Green Goblin's true identity. And this is to use to demonstrate visually what Ditko was planning and planting the seeds earlier on in his storytelling. So he wasn't just coming up off the cuff. He was very much thinking ahead and introducing characters in the background and concepts and such. So that's where the academic element comes down. And the use of the animation into it then means that it's transformative. So I'm not just like slapping in comic book pages, like I'm taking you through, guiding you to specific points as addressed and covered by the speakers. So that's just really important as well. To make that aware that I'm not just adding in, because there are times in the documentary where I could just, it's purely for aesthetic purposes and to fill the screen time, add in images. But no, we don't do that. And we're not making money off this at all. Like it's not going to be monetized in any shape or form. And I get to the reason, like why make it if it's not being monetized, and what our hope is with the project in just a moment. So when you look at everything, and then of course when I introduce the characters, they do appear, but again it's transformative. And the reason why I have those images is so that we have to establish the characters that we're talking about. So that therein lies the fair usage element to it as well in copyright. And then when we're using stuff from the Ditko verse, let's say like Mr. A, or if you see family photographs of Steve Ditko, between him and his family, him as a younger man, I was able to source those and then contact Mark Ditko, and I showed Mark the earliest drafts of the documentary as well, and to make him aware we're including this, and so that he could advise if there's anything that they wanted changed. And thankfully, we're in a good cut now where they're aware of what's going to be in the documentary, and everything's above board, and the copyright notice is given to them. And one final element is I was able to reach out to Ken Viola, who has also seen the documentary, and Ken famously did the Masters of Comic Book Art documentary, and I kind of wanted to end the documentary from hearing some of the words of Steve Ditko himself, and famously, Steve appeared vocally in that documentary with his narration over some of his artwork, and I was able to, with the copyright permission of Ken, include a snippet of that into this documentary and edit as well. And that's given the appropriate copyright notice also. So that's where the fair usage and everything is coming into play. So absolutely, this isn't me just, breaking copyright laws or going around with, adding in characters as decoration. We're using certain imagery with an explicit purpose to inform the general audience as well, of what the intent is, and to really delve deep into the examination of the topics in which we bring up. So then, what's the hope for the documentary then as well? Like, what's the expectation? Currently, at this point of recording, news is just broken that Spider-Man Brand New Day, the latest cinematic release featuring the web slinger, has opened to all-time highest opening in cinematic history, beating Avengers Endgame now as well. And uh, as a result of that, we have to take a moment and realize, well, to reach that kind of a box office, you're talking about a character which is appealing to a multitude of different people around the world of different race, creed, gender, ideologies. It's not just one type of audience that's turning out to see this character. We're talking about people all around the globe united, finding something, connecting with this character, with this idea. And we explore this, and Dr. Zach Cruzy really elegantly addresses it within the documentary as well. But as academics, as fans of the work, there's something very universal about the character, which clearly speaks to us. And it's important then that we explore the why and the how, and how this helps to explain us. Like, what is the appeal? And why is it appealing? And often when I'm teaching, I've taught for a number of years animation history and theory, and one of the elements we explore, particularly in Irish history, is the use of the political cartoon and cartoonists as well. Famously, Jim Larkin, a prominent figure during the 1913 lockout, he both utilized the political cartoon against his opponents, and it was used against him. But a number of years ago, I remember hearing an interview with John Lithgow, and he pointed out how during the 1920s and 30s, when the slumlords and the mobs were kind of domineering over the working class people, adult literacy wasn't what it is today. And as a result, these exposés that were written about, the big, gangsters trying to rule over the working class, that kind of those exposés went over their head. They weren't reading as much. That didn't reach them. But what did was the political cartoon, which poked fun at these characters, because where they try to present themselves as the untouchable, these, domineering, these, just too big to lose characters. The cartoonists could poke fun at them and then make the working guy laugh at them, and as a result, help them, diminish and lose some of the hold and intimidating power they had over the people. So ultimately, comic books, the medium, I think the stigma attached to it now is really starting to erode in recent years. Like in the last, 2 decades, we've seen everything becoming more mainstream. But you also have to remember that the stories we tell are so important in identifying of ourselves. Essentially, we use stories to transmit information. to learn about our heritage and how we arrived at this point in time. It's also where, our earliest sense of morality comes from as well and is conveyed and passed down. So storytelling is so important. And regardless of what the medium is, when it speaks to someone, it's important to take a moment to pause and to explore the why. And that's what I hope I have achieved in this particular documentary. It's not to really delve into, why Steve Ditko did what he did. That's not what this project is, but it's helped to dispel many myths which have spun up about Steve Ditko because he didn't want to engage with the general public in the manner of some modern creators. He didn't want to have his cameo. He didn't want to give interviews. He would talk to you about ideas, but he didn't really want to give a journalistic interview about the why he did this. He's very much about the work should speak for itself. Absolutely. Um, but the paradox, why do a documentary about Steve Ditko when it probably wasn't, in fact, not even probably, it wasn't something he ever wanted? Um, it goes back to that point where if you think about it, the way we approach, consider, or how we react to something were shaped in our response more by the social, entertainment and social media that we consume before legislation catches up or anything. What entertains us has a very profound effect. It can uplift us, it can give us a moment to pause. It's a powerful medium, essentially, when you convey a story. So this documentary, I'm trying to reconcile. Okay, the individual wanted you to the work to speak for itself, but I don't think at the same time that that means we should let certain misunderstandings or mistruths about the creator stand. And this isn't a documentary where airing dirty laundry or pointing fingers. Now, as I mentioned, my undergraduate was in history, so I've been exercising the skills I learned as a historian. One of these like one of the subjects I studied in college was historiography, which is the history of history. A primary source comes directly from the time being studied. But just because you have a primary source, that doesn't definitively mean that's the truth. That's how it happened. That's 100% accurate. It's still just how was that source recorded? Who recorded it? What would the inherent bias be? So I remember one particular element, I submitted something to do with the Genesis of Spider-Man to Mark, and he came back with some great notes on it as well for me to reconsider. And I was able to go back to the primary source, which I was using, which was Steve Ditko's own essays on the creation of Spider-Man. But there was one essay in particular which he labeled speculation. And again, even he himself, Steve Ditko, would not commit to writing out to his own records anything that he could not stand over. Like if he did not bear witness to something, he would label it as speculation. That's really important. And it also really speaks to the integrity and standard of character he was as well. Where others might have just put down their point of view and presented it as this definitive story, Mr. Ditko was very careful to include only that which he was able to stand over and verify. And as a result, a major faux pas of the documentary, which arguably could have ruined the work we were trying to establish, that was able to be avoided. And subsequently, then I was able to show an early cut of the documentary to several people who I have no professional or personal connection to, complete external reviewers who have come back with very positive feedback as well. So that means that we're doing something right, that it is reaching a good balance. Because I could have easily made a video and expressed my love of Mr. Ditko and his work and my opinion, but that's not this piece either. We're trying to give a balanced account of Steve Ditko was an individual, sorry, who Steve Ditko was as an individual, and at the same time trying to dispel many myths around the individual. We're not here to really, debate his intent of his work. I still believe when you watch the documentary, you walk away with a sense of the work will speak for itself. But what you'll get when you watch a documentary is maybe more of a sense of how you may go about reading the work, like certain elements you might look out for, and really an appreciation for what he put into his carefully considering his stories, what he put into it as well. So, I wanted to just wrap up with this particular video, the making of Steve Ditko Beyond the Myth, because this is being recorded on Monday. It will go out on Tuesday, the 4th of August, and then on August the 6th, 2026, the full documentary will be available to watch and stream for free on YouTube on the TASQ YouTube channel. I've been aware since we announced the project, we have a couple of new followers. So I just wanted to release this video to introduce Creator in Conversation and, of course, TASQ Art. Really, this project is demonstrating uh, what can be achieved by having an institution such as an Academy of Sequential Art, what we can achieve and what we might be able to do and explore. We have any resources, my own independent resource, there's no other backers behind it. But if you enjoy what you see, if you found use behind it, if it's been useful, again, as I stated at the start of the video, please consider, liking or subscribing or sharing the content as well. That will help us grow. And I keep saying us, and I just want to just to take a moment to acknowledge it's me. It's me doing anything. I've been very blessed to work with many associate faculty, but essentially the lecturers here will come in, deliver their class, and I'd move on to the next project. Um, so yeah, this is very much something I'm passionate about, of course. But I believe great work can be achieved, and I believe I can do more if you guys get behind get behind and let us know what you think as well. If you have counterpoints to anything that we do, or if you enjoy what you've seen in this particular video, maybe go back through the archives and look at a masterclass with Kevin Eastman, where he explores and tells us the entirety of the history of TMNT, right up to working on The Last Ronin and how that came about. Or maybe our great in-depth conversation with Frank Miller, where really we had a great Q&A with our students, members, and the general public as well. So there's lots of information available, and Creator in Conversation is now its mission statement is to act as a repository for, hindsight, advice, techniques shared by leading industry experts. It's going to be a great repository and archival source of knowledge as well, which I hope will be available for people indefinitely, for as long as YouTube anyway, or Apple Podcasts or Spotify exists. Um, I'm going to leave this out there for everyone. And again, what we've done with Creator and Conversation, what we're doing with this documentary, there's no monetization strategy behind this. I haven't designed it to make money either. So, and that's important to emphasize again, because it's letting you know that there's a balance being struck here. If I wanted to monetize it, I could make it more salacious. There's lots that could have been done to get those clicks. But really, I'm putting together this documentary and putting this out there to you all so you get a real sense of a lot of misunderstanding behind one of the most influential creators within the comic book medium. And some of you might even argue that point. But when you explore and really look at the impact and legacy of Steve Ditko, it is extremely influential, like how the impact of what he left behind. And again, go to the cinema, check out Spider-Man Brand New Day, maybe check out this documentary afterwards. And you probably notice a few points being brought up by some of our speakers between what has been said and what makes it to the screen, and again, the influence of Steve Ditko in that regard. So to wrap up, I just again want to really thank and emphasize the contributions of Dr. Zach Cruzy and his influential text on me, Mysterious Travelers. If you can, seek out the book, read it. It's very accessible, thoroughly enjoyable, very informative. And Dr. Cruzy is working on his own documentary as well, and has been for a while. And that's going to be the superior product to what you're going to see on Thursday with Steve Ditko Beyond the Myth. That's not me punching down on my own documentary. It's just acknowledging that when I designed the documentary, when I made a documentary, the project wasn't initially conceived as such. It was just a mini series of an audio podcast. So now going in and recutting everything, and everyone's using different devices, and everyone's using Zoom and varying audio quality. I've done my best to clean up and to present it, but of course, I feel what we have at the end is something which would stand as a great TV documentary where you could watch it on television. That's a comment John made as well. So I'm very satisfied with it, but I know Dr. Cruzy, because he has designed and envisioned his documentary as being such from the very beginning, that's just going to be something wonderful. So where you can follow the work of Dr. Cruzy, he's also working with the Ditko family on archiving and making notes of Steve Ditko's personal library. And I have a great amount of debt to Zach for everything that he's contributed and being a great correspondent subsequently as well. And I wish him all the best, and I really want to thank him for everything he's contributed. I also want to thank, of course, Jack C. Harris, who provided amazing insight to Steve Ditko's professional career. Like, Jack was there looking over Steve Ditko's shoulder as he was drawing, and he describes this as well in the documentary. Like, this is somebody who was a friend of Steve Ditko, but also a collaborator and colleague of Steve Ditko, and he really heightens that in his text, Working with Ditko, which is available from Tomorrow Press, and seek that out where you can, because Jack highlights and emphasizes Steve Ditko as a collaborator, which again dispels one of the many myths of him being this recluse. No, he wasn't. He was a very open and approachable collaborator and correspondent. And again, none of this would be possible at all if it wasn't for the generosity, patience, guidance and support of Moxen Ditko and the Ditko family. They've just been amazing. Every time I approached Mark, I was almost apologetic, feeling I was taking a monopoly of his time. And he's like, "Owen, like, this is what I'm here for now, is to set the record straight." So he was amazing. He, as I mentioned, he helped steer the documentary where I had any concerns if I thought uh, if I needed to check up on a source. Mark was available and helped to point me in the right direction as to where I could look up and find answers to my questions as well. So Mark made this, really come together, and can't thank him enough as well, just for putting his trust in me as well and making this. So that's pretty much what I have to say now. Hopefully, this hasn't been a snore fest for you listening in. I just wanted to put this out now to keep the usual Tuesday schedule of creating conversation. We typically have a new episode every Tuesday, but I've moved the release of the documentary to Thursday, and it's going to be Thursday, the 6th of August at 7 p.m. Irish time and UK time. That would be about 12 p.m. Eastern time in the US. And the reason we've moved it to this point in time is because this coming weekend there are two major conventions, Dublin Comic Con happening in the Convention Centre here in Dublin, and then there's also Terrificon happening in Connecticut in the US. So myself and John, when we were talking about the project, we realized it's probably best not to post it the weekend after San Diego Comic Con when there's so much news coming out. But it's a good proximity between the release of the new Spider-Man film and just going into some new conventions starting up as well. So it's getting that balance where we hope people might check it out and start that conversation around it. And I just want to close out then as well to express my gratitude to my good friend John Suttress for coming on board to provide the narration. Like, he really does elevate the project because he has that great broadcaster voice he's gifted with. So he really helped to elevate that. He helped me when I was presenting my script. He had suggestions on how to make it sound better to the ear and how it would flow. And he showed great patience and availability to me as well during the recording sessions. And he's really been great in supporting and spreading the word about the project to his colleagues and friends as well. And I'm really, really can't thank John for that as well, and to come on board and to participate in this manner. And if you haven't already, please check out John Sutcher's leading industry podcast, Word Balloon. It's an institution in the field at this stage, and my podcast is just a very small pebble in the ocean compared to the impact that John has left behind, and continues to build with his brilliant podcast. So, and if you can, check out his Patreon as well, patreon.com/wordballoon, where you will also find his digital magazines as well. Where he has transcriptions of his podcasts and available as a great archival resource. So, thanks to John, Jack, Zach, and Mark. I really hope you all appreciate what's gone into Steve Ditko Beyond the Myth. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, queries, arguments, you can reach out to me at info@tasqart.com. That's TASQ. Stands for Tala Academy of Sequential Art. And I encourage you to look back at some of our previous episodes as well. There's a great archive there of some amazing conversations. And you won't have to wait too long for our next release, as Thursday, the 6th of August, we'll see the release of Steve Ditko Beyond the Myth. Set your notification now on our YouTube page, and it will alert you as soon as the video goes live. Until next time, Creating Conversation is a copyright production of Macaulay Consultancy 2026.